Hey guys, tonight we are setting sail with one of the most famous and controversial figures in all of history, Christopher Columbus. But forget the heroic statues, the national holidays, and the simple story of a man who sailed the ocean blue in 1492. We're going to explore the decades of soul-crushing failure, public humiliation, and obsessive, deeply flawed conviction that defined his actual life, long before he ever set foot on a ship bound for nowhere. So, before we begin, if you enjoy these quiet dives into history's unglamorous truths, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. And as always, I'd love to know where you are listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's a quiet pleasure to see our global community of history sleepers grow. Now, let's pull out our badly drawn maps, check the winds of fortune, and ease into the long, frustrating journey of a man with a very persistent, very wrong idea. Congratulations. You are Cristoforo Colombo, born around the year 1451. You are the son of a humble wool weaver in the bustling, competitive port city of Genoa. The good news, you are born into a world crackling with the energy of the Renaissance, a time of exploration, innovation, and immense possibility. The bad news, you have an idea, a grand, world-changing idea, and absolutely everyone who is an expert in the field thinks your idea is dangerously, almost comically, wrong. Your revolutionary plan is to reach the rich spice markets of the East Indies, China, Japan, India, by sailing west across the Atlantic. It's a brilliant shortcut, a way to bypass the long, treacherous route around Africa that the Portuguese are slowly mastering, and to cut out the Venetian and Ottoman middlemen who control the overland trade. There is only one tiny, continent-sized problem with your plan, a small geographical detail you've overlooked: the existence of North and South America. But your bigger, more immediate problem is your math. This is the great historical fact that underpins all of your early failures. The educated world of the 15th century does not believe the Earth is flat. That is a myth invented much later. Every competent navigator, scholar, and royal advisor knows the world is a sphere. The problem is not the shape, it's the size. Based on the widely accepted calculations of the ancient Greek scholar Eratosthenes, the circumference of the Earth was known to be approximately 25,000 miles. This meant that the ocean between the coast of Europe and the coast of Asia was immense, far too vast to be crossed by the ships of your time. You, however, disagree. You are a talented sailor and a self-taught navigator. But you are not a great scholar. You cherry-pick your data. You use the older, less accurate calculations of Ptolemy. You accept the wildly optimistic estimates of the Florentine scholar Toscanelli. And then you fudge the numbers even further, convincing yourself that the distance from the Canary Islands to Japan is only about 2,400 nautical miles. The actual distance is closer to 12,000. Your math is not just wrong, it's creatively, almost poetically wrong. You become a man possessed by this beautiful, flawed idea. You spend your early adulthood at sea, learning the winds and the currents, sailing on merchant ships as far as Iceland and down the coast of Africa. In the 1470s, you settle in Lisbon, Portugal, the undisputed global center of maritime exploration. This is an obscure but vital part of your story. You are not a random adventurer. You work as a professional chart maker with your brother Bartholomew. You are surrounded by the best maps, the best sailors, and the most advanced navigational knowledge in the world. And you choose to ignore almost all of it because it contradicts your great idea. You spend years developing what you call the Enterprise of the Indies, a formal proposal for a westward voyage. Finally, in 1484, you get your chance. You are granted an audience with King John II of Portugal. You make your pitch. The king, an intelligent and savvy ruler, refers your proposal to a royal commission of maritime experts, the Junta dos Matemáticos. They are the best of the best. They look at your maps, they check your calculations, and they deliver a devastating verdict. Your math is nonsense. They politely inform you that the ocean is much, much bigger than you claim, and that any voyage based on your numbers would end with the entire crew starving to death in the middle of an impossibly vast sea. They are, for the record, completely correct. You are dismissed. The rejection is humiliating. You have just been told by the most respected experts in the world that your life's great ambition is a fantasy. But you are not just a dreamer. You are a profoundly stubborn man. Whether you were a genuine, deluded believer in your own flawed calculations or a masterful con man who knew his numbers were wrong but pushed the idea anyway out of sheer, desperate ambition, is the fundamental question of your character. What is certain is that you do not give up. You spend the next several years wandering from one royal court to another, a traveling salesman of a bad idea. You petition nobles in Genoa and Venice. They refuse. You even send your brother to pitch the idea to the King of England. He is also rejected. Your life is a cycle of hope and humiliation. You are a man with a single, all-consuming obsession, living on the charity of patrons who believe in your piety, if not your geography. You are a laughing stock in the very circles you need to impress. This is not the story of a bold visionary fighting against a world of flat earthers. This is the story of a man with a bad map and faulty math, trying to convince the smartest people in the world that he knows better. After years of failure in Portugal, dejected and nearly broke, you decide to try your luck with Portugal's greatest rival. You move to Spain, to the court of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, to begin the entire soul-crushing process all over again. You arrive in the Kingdom of Castile, Spain, in 1485. A man in his mid-30s, already weathered by the sea and by years of professional disappointment. You carry with you your maps, your flawed calculations, and your single, all-consuming obsession. This is your last best hope. Spain, a kingdom forged from the union of its two powerful monarchs, Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile, is Portugal's greatest rival. You hope to play that rivalry to your advantage. You believe that where the Portuguese saw mathematical impossibility, the Spanish might see a strategic opportunity to one-up their neighbors. Unfortunately, you have arrived at a very inconvenient time. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. Your timing is terrible. You arrive in Spain to pitch your world-changing idea of exploration and trade. Unfortunately, Ferdinand and Isabella are currently in the final bloody stages of a 700-year-old war. The Reconquista, the great crusade to drive the last of the Moorish rulers from the Iberian Peninsula, is their life's work. They are pouring every resource, every coin, and every ounce of their political energy into the siege of the Emirate of Granada. Your modest request for 3 small ships and a royal commission to sail into what they believe is an empty ocean is filed under the mental category of ambitious foreigner with bad math and terrible timing. Please ignore. But you are nothing if not persistent. Through a series of minor contacts, you managed to gain the support of a few influential figures at court, most notably Luis de Santangel, the keeper of the royal accounts for King Ferdinand. This is an obscure but vital part of your story. Your survival during these years depends on these patrons. Many, like Santangel, are conversos, influential Jews who had converted to Christianity and now held key positions in the royal administration. They are men of finance, open to new, potentially profitable ideas, and they see a glimmer of possibility in your mad scheme. They keep you afloat. You spend the next 7 years following the royal court from city to city, from Cordoba to Salamanca to Santa Fe, like a stray dog waiting for scraps to fall from the master's table. You are given a small stipend from the royal treasury, just enough to not starve to death, which is the Spanish court's polite way of saying, "We haven't said no yet, but please do not get your hopes up." Your life is a humiliating, endless cycle of waiting. You are a foreigner with a thick Genoese accent, a threadbare cloak, and a reputation as the madman who was laughed out of the Portuguese court. You spend your days in the anterooms of power trying to get a moment with a royal advisor, trying to explain your theories to anyone who will listen. You are constantly being examined, questioned, and dismissed. Queen Isabella, a deeply pious and intelligent ruler, is intrigued by the missionary aspect of your proposal, the idea of reaching the peoples of the East and converting them to Christianity. But she, like the Portuguese king, refers your project to a special commission of experts, led by her confessor, Hernando de Talavera. The commission meets, they review your maps and your calculations, and then they deliberate for 4 years, 4 agonizing years. While you wait, your hair begins to turn grey. You watch other, more important matters consume the court's attention. You watch armies march to Granada. You see the Spanish Inquisition consolidate its terrible power. And you wait. Finally, in 1490, the Talavera Commission emerges with a verdict. Their conclusion: your math is still spectacularly, fundamentally wrong. The ocean is, they correctly surmise, much, much bigger than you claim. The voyage is not feasible. They recommend that the monarchs reject your proposal. It is the most thorough, time-consuming and soul-crushing rejection of your entire career. Whether Queen Isabella was genuinely intrigued by your religious fervor, or if she simply kept you around for years as a potential strategic asset, a wild card to be used against Portugal should the need arise, is a matter of interpretation. What is certain is that after the Commission's report, your dream is officially dead. You are dismissed. 7 years of your life have been wasted. You are now in your early 40s, a failed petitioner, your great enterprise of the Indies in tatters. You prepare to leave Spain for good, perhaps to try your luck in France. You are packing your bags, a broken and forgotten man. It is at this lowest moment, when all hope is lost, that the unpredictable winds of history finally, inexplicably, begin to shift in your favor. You are leaving Granada, a man utterly defeated. 7 years of your life have been consumed by the Spanish court, and for nothing. The Commission has rejected you. The monarchs have dismissed you. You are now in your 40s, with no money, no patron, and a reputation as a stubborn fool. Your great enterprise of the Indies is dead. As you ride your sad-looking mule out of the city, heading for France to begin the whole humiliating process all over again, you hear the sound of hoofbeats behind you. A royal messenger riding a fine horse catches up to you. He tells you that you are to return to the court at once. Queen Isabella has changed her mind. What has happened is a major historical fact, a grand turning of the geopolitical tide that has, by sheer dumb luck, created a new current for your ship of dreams. Just days before, the city of Granada, the last stronghold of the Moorish rulers in Spain, finally fell to the armies of Ferdinand and Isabella. The 700-year-long Reconquista is over. The war is won. The nation is euphoric, unified, and suddenly the monarchs have a great deal of attention and a bit of spare cash on their hands. It is in this precise moment of national triumph that your steadfast patron, the finance minister Luis de Santangel, makes one last passionate appeal to the Queen. He argues that your voyage is a small, cheap gamble compared to the cost of the war. He points out that the Portuguese are close to rounding Africa and will soon dominate the spice trade. He argues that this is Spain's chance to leapfrog them, to find a new path to the east, and to spread the Catholic faith to the unconquered lands of the Grand Khan. Why Isabella changed her mind so suddenly is a source of fascination. Was it a burst of religious piety after the victory at Granada? A shrewd political calculation to keep you from taking your still very Flawed idea to the King of France? Or did Louis de Saint-Angel just happen to catch her in a really good, triumphant mood? Whatever the reason, it works. You are summoned back to the royal camp at Santa Fe, and after years of begging, you are finally given your yes. But this is the next reason it sucks to be you. Your grand world-changing enterprise is not going to be a top-tier, state-funded project. It is a shoestring operation, cobbled together with leftovers. The legend says, Queen Isabella offered to pawn her crown jewels to fund your voyage. The boring, obscure reality is that your expedition is being funded by some spare cash from the Treasury, and more importantly, by forcing a small port town in trouble with the law to give you a couple of their boats as a form of community service. The town of Palos de la Frontera owed the Crown a penalty for some past smuggling offences. Their punishment is now to provide you with 2 fully crewed ships for your voyage. You are given grand titles, Admiral of the Ocean Sea, Viceroy and Governor of all new lands. But you are not given a grand fleet. You get 3 ships. The Santa Maria, a slow, tubby merchant vessel that you charter, and the 2 small, nimble caravels provided by the town of Palos, the Pinta and the Nina. These are not great ships of discovery. They are workaday trading vessels, and the Nina, whose name actually means the girl, is tiny, barely 60 feet long. Now you need a crew. But respectable, experienced sailors are not exactly lining up to join a foreign madman who is famous for being wrong about the size of the ocean, on a mission to sail off the known edge of the map. So, you get the crew you can afford. You get a few excellent, respected captains from Palos, the Pinzon brothers, who are crucial in convincing local sailors to join. But to fill out the roster of about 90 men, you also get a motley collection of petty criminals, debtors, and toughs who were given a simple choice by the Crown: a long, unpleasant stay in a Spanish prison, or a potentially shorter, more unpleasant stay at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. You are leading a crew partially staffed by men who are only there because it is slightly better than jail. You spend months in the dusty port of Palos, overseeing the outfitting of your small, unimpressive fleet. You are an admiral with no admiralty, a viceroy with no subjects. You are a man whose dream has finally been approved, but on terms that seem designed for failure. You are being given just enough rope to sail out into the middle of nowhere and hang yourself. But it is your only chance. After nearly a decade of humiliation, you will take it. You watch as barrels of hardtack and salted fish are loaded onto your tiny ships, the bare minimum of supplies for a voyage that you claim will be short, but that every other sailor in the port is betting will be a one-way trip. August 3rd, 1492. Your small, unimpressive fleet finally sets sail from the port of Palos. You spend the first month navigating familiar waters, making repairs and taking on final supplies in the Canary Islands. Then, on September 6th, you give the order. You turn the helms of your 3 small ships due west. You watch as the last known land, the island of El Hierro, sinks below the eastern horizon. Ahead of you is nothing. Not a single known island, not a charted current, not a friendly shoreline for thousands of miles. It is just a vast, terrifying, and profoundly empty expanse of water, a region the sailors call the Sea of Darkness. Your crew is nervous. You are terrified, but you are very, very good at pretending you're not. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. You are, for all practical purposes, sailing blind. This is a major historical fact of 15th century navigation. You and your pilots can determine your latitude, your north-south, and position with reasonable accuracy by measuring the angle of the North Star above the horizon. But you have no reliable way to determine your longitude, your east-west position. There are no clocks accurate enough to survive a sea voyage, which would be the only way to calculate it properly. Your only method for knowing how far west you have traveled is a grimly imprecise technique called dead reckoning. Every day you look at the bubbles and seaweed floating past the hull of your ship and make a guess at your speed. That looks like about 5 knots, you might say. You note the direction from your compass. You estimate the effects of ocean currents. Then, at the end of the day, you make a mark on your chart, a best guess of your new position. It is a system of navigation based on vibes, wishful thinking, and pure, unadulterated hope. Days turn into a week, then 2. You are blessed with a steady, favorable wind, the trade winds, that pushes your small fleet steadily west. But this blessing is also a curse. The wind only blows west. It never seems to shift. A new, more profound terror begins to spread among your crew. If the wind only ever blows in this one direction, how will you ever get home? You are sailing on a one-way road to oblivion. Morale, which was already fragile, begins to crumble. The men, a callback to the mix of pardoned criminals and nervous sailors you were forced to recruit, start to whisper. They stare at the endless, unchanging horizon. They see monsters in the clouds and bad omens in the seaweed. You realize that your greatest challenge is not the ocean. It is the psychology of the 90 men who are trapped on these 3 small wooden specks with you. So you resort to deception. This is an obscure but famous part of your first voyage. You keep 2 logbooks. You show 1 log to the crew every day, in which you deliberately underreport the distance you've sailed. A good day's journey, men. You might announce, "We have made 45 leagues." Then later, in the privacy of your small, damp cabin, you open your secret, real logbook. In it, you write the truth. Sailed 60 leagues today. We are now terrifyingly far from home, much farther than I told the men. If my math is wrong about the size of the earth, we are all going to die. Saw a dolphin this afternoon, which was nice. How much your crew truly believed your falsified log, and how much they were simply playing, along while their own terror grew, is a matter of speculation. Sailors are not fools, and many of them could read the sky and the sea as well as you could. They knew they were further from home than any European had ever been. The tension on the ships becomes a thick, mutinous poison. The men talk of turning back. The Pinzon brothers, your Spanish captains, come to you and warn that the crew is on the verge of seizing the ships and throwing you overboard. You are not a warrior king. Like Alexander leading a disciplined army, you are a foreign project manager, leading a team of deeply skeptical contractors who are starting to suspect the project is a fraud. You have no real authority other than the royal decree from a queen, who is thousands of miles away. Your only weapons are your own unshakable and possibly insane self-confidence and your ability to sell a story. You give speeches. You remind them of the riches of the Indies that await them. You point to flocks of birds and patches of green seaweed as proof that land is near. You are a con artist, a motivational speaker, and a ship's captain, all at once. Every day is a high-wire act of managing the terror of your crew while wrestling with the cold, gnawing fear in your own gut that your critics, the Portuguese experts, the Spanish Commission, and now your own sailors might have been right all along. You are alone in the middle of a vast, empty ocean, and the only thing keeping you alive is the power of a story that, with every passing landless day, feels more and more like a lie. After 33 days of seeing nothing but water, the mood on your fleet has turned from mere mutiny to a kind of homicidal despair. Your crew is done. They are whispering, plotting. The Pinzon brothers come to you with a grim ultimatum. Turn back now, or they will not be able to stop the crew from throwing you into the sea. You negotiate. You beg. You promise them that if you do not find land in 3 more days, you will turn the ships around. It is a desperate bluff to buy yourself a little more time. You spend the next 2 days in a state of quiet, prayerful terror, staring at the western horizon, knowing your life and your entire dream now have a 72-hour deadline. Then, on the night of October 11th, a lookout on the Pinta spots something, a faint, dark line on the horizon, glowing under the light of the moon. Then a cry echoes across the water. Tierra! Tierra, land. The relief is so profound, so total, it is a physical force. Men are weeping, laughing, embracing. You are overcome with a sense of absolute, divine vindication. You have done it. You have crossed the Sea of Darkness. You have reached the Indies. The bad news, you haven't. You have reached a small sandy island in what will one day be called the Bahamas, populated by people who have never heard of the Grand Khan of China and seem to be disappointingly low on black, pepper and marketable silks. The next morning, on October 12th, 1492, you go ashore in an armed boat. You plant the royal banner of Castile and Leon in the sand, flanked by the Pinzon brothers. You formally claim the island for the Spanish crown, an act of breathtaking arrogance that completely ignores the fact that the island is already inhabited. You name the island San Salvador, Holy Savior, a callback to your own sense of divine purpose. This is an obscure but telling habit you will develop. You are not interested in what the local people call their homes. You will proceed to rename every island you encounter with a pious Spanish name, symbolically erasing the existing world and overwriting it with your own. The exact island where you first made landfall is one of the most debated topics in naval history. The only thing that is certain is that wherever it was not Japan. The local people, the Taino, emerge from the woods and approach you with curiosity and caution. They are, as you will later write in your journal, a handsome and gentle people. They are also, to your immediate and obsessive interest, wearing small ornaments of gold in their noses. This single, tiny detail becomes the focal point of your entire reality. You are not interested in their culture, their society, or their language. You are interested in where they got that gold. Your first encounter with the people of the New World is not one of cultural exchange. It is a business appraisal. You note in your journal their peaceful nature and their simple weapons, and immediately follow it up with an observation on how they would make excellent servants, and how easily they could be conquered with just 50 men. You are not a cultural ambassador. You are a man with a very specific business plan, and you have investors back home to whom you have made some very large promises. Your moment of triumph is immediately poisoned by your own delusion. You have not found the grand cities described by Marco Polo. You have not found the spice-laden markets of the East. You have found a collection of small, simple villages populated by people living a Neolithic lifestyle. But you cannot, you will not accept this. Your entire credibility, your titles, your very life depend on this being the outskirts of Asia. So you begin a desperate, frantic search for evidence to support your flawed theory. You sail from island to island. Your primary method of diplomacy is to show the natives a piece of gold, point at their nose rings, and then gesture aggressively at the horizon while asking, "More? Where?" It is a very effective way to make a terrible first impression. You see the natives as a resource, nothing more. You kidnap several of them to act as your guides, and later as living exhibits to prove the success of your voyage to the Queen. You are convinced they are Indians, people of the Indies. And you are obsessed with finding the source of their gold. They point you towards other larger islands, what we now know as Cuba and Hispaniola. And you follow, your mind a fever dream of gold mines and grand palaces that are always just over the next horizon. Your great discovery is not a moment of wonder. It is a moment of profound, willful misunderstanding, a desperate attempt to force reality to fit the shape of your own bad map. Your desperate, island-hopping search for gold continues for weeks. You sail along the coasts of what you have named Juana, modern Cuba, and then move on to a large mountainous island you call La Isla Española or Hispaniola. You find small amounts of gold, enough to fuel your obsession, but you do not find the grand cities or wealthy kings you promised your patrons. What you find are more villages of the Taíno people who greet you with a mixture of awe and fear. You trade cheap glass beads and brass hawk's bells for their small golden ornaments, a transaction that feels like a genius business deal to you and will have catastrophic consequences for them. Your crew, a callback to the skeptical men you barely kept from mutiny, is growing restless again. They did not sign up for a months-long ethnographic tour, they signed up for riches. And you have not delivered. It is now late December. You have been exploring for nearly 3 months. You are exhausted. Your men are exhausted. The nights are long, and the constant vigilance has worn you down. On the night of Christmas Eve, 1492, you are sailing along the northern coast of Hispaniola. The sea is calm, the wind is light. It is a peaceful, quiet night. Feeling the fatigue of the past months, you decide to retire to your cabin for some much-needed sleep. You leave the helm of your flagship, the Santa Maria, in the hands of a subordinate. He, in turn, seeing how calm the sea is, decides it is a good opportunity to get some sleep himself, and hands the tiller to an inexperienced cabin boy, a direct violation of your standing orders. This is a classic management mistake, a moment of mundane negligence that is about to have significant consequences for your flagship's structural integrity. You are woken not by a bell, but by the horrifying, unmistakable sound of splintering wood and the sickening, grinding scrape of your ship's hull running aground. The cabin boy, having fallen asleep at the tiller, has allowed the ship to drift onto a coral reef. The Santa Maria, your flagship, your largest and most important vessel, is dying. Merry Christmas. The ocean has just given you a very large, very expensive piece of coal. The panic is immediate. The crew rushes onto the deck. You try to use the ship's anchor and capstan to pull her off the reef, but it is no use. The coral has ripped a hole in her hull, and she is taking on water fast, her timbers groaning under the strain. The waves are now pushing her further, onto the reef, breaking her back. The ship is lost. As the dawn breaks on Christmas Day, your disaster is witnessed by the local Taíno people. Seeing your plight, they do not attack. Instead, the local chief, or cacique, a man named Guacanagari, does something extraordinary. He orders his people to help you. This is an obscure but vital part of the story. Dozens of canoes paddle out to your dying ship. The Taíno people, the savages you plan to enslave and exploit, work for hours, alongside your own sailors, helping you unload everything of value from the sinking vessel. Barrels of food, cannons, crossbows, trade goods. They are so efficient and so honest that, as you will later write, not a single item is stolen. It is an act of profound, unsolicited kindness and generosity. You, of course, immediately interpret this as a clear sign from God that He wants you to build a fort here and leave some of your men behind to find the nearby gold mine that must surely exist. You are now faced with a logistical nightmare. Your flagship is gone. You cannot fit all of your remaining men onto the tiny Niña for the long voyage home. You must leave some of them behind. Whether your decision to establish a colony was a calculated strategic move to create a permanent foothold, or a desperate act of necessity because you simply ran out of space, is a point of interpretation. It was, most likely, a convenient mixture of both. Using the salvaged timbers of the Santa Maria, you order your men to build a small, crude fort. You call it La Navidad, in honor of the day of the disaster. You choose 39 men to stay behind. You give them a year's worth of supplies, trade goods to barter for gold, and strict orders to treat the native Taino people with respect while they search for the source of their gold. You promise them you will return with a larger fleet the following year. As you prepare the tiny Niña for the voyage home, you look at the men you are leaving behind. They are a mix of adventurers excited by the prospect of finding gold and terrified sailors who know they are being abandoned. They are a callback to the motley crew of convicts and misfits you scraped together in Palos. You have led them across the ocean to what you promised was a paradise, and you are now leaving nearly half of them shipwrecked on an unknown shore, thousands of miles from home. It is your first great failure as a commander, and it will not be your last. You set sail for Spain in early January 1493, leaving 39 of your men and the ghost of your flagship behind you. The journey home will not be a triumphant parade. It will be a desperate, terrifying race against starvation, storms, and the vast, unforgiving emptiness of the Atlantic in winter. You are sailing on the Niña, a vessel so small and fragile that crossing a large lake in it would feel like a gamble. You are accompanied by the Pinta, captained by the ambitious Martín Alonso Pinzón, who has already temporarily deserted you once in a fit of pique to go looking for his own mythical island of gold. You do not trust him. In truth, you do not trust anyone. Your cargo hold is not filled with the mountains of gold, the precious silks, or the valuable spices you promised the Queen. This is another miserable reason it sucks to be you. After months of exploration, your grand haul, the proof of your discovery of the rich Indies, consists of a few dozen colorful parrots who will not stop squawking, some strange plants that you insist are a new kind of cinnamon, but which are actually just tree bark, some balls of cotton, a handful of small golden trinkets, and 10 captive Taino natives who are cold, sick, terrified, and deeply regretting their decision to approach your strange, floating wooden house. It is not the cargo of a man who has opened a new trade route to Asia. It is the cargo of a man who has stumbled upon a remote island and stolen some of its inhabitants and souvenirs. The journey east is a brutal slog against the wind. A callback to the crew's earlier fears, the same trade winds that pushed you so easily to the west are now your greatest enemy. You are forced to sail far to the north into colder, stormier latitudes to find the westerly winds that will blow you home. Whether your navigational choices on this return voyage were a result of brilliant, intuitive seamanship in finding the prevailing westerlies, or simply a series of lucky guesses that narrowly avoided total disaster, is something that sailors and historians still argue about. From your perspective, huddled in your small cabin on a wildly pitching ship, it feels mostly like the latter. In mid-February, the ocean, which was so deceptively calm on your way out, decides to finally invoice you for the trip. You sail directly into one of the worst Atlantic storms of the decade. The two small ships are separated in the chaos. You are alone on the Niña, and the storm is a monster of screaming wind and colossal waves. Your tiny ship is tossed about like a child's toy in a bathtub if the child was an angry, malevolent god with a personal grudge. Waves crash over the deck, threatening to swamp the vessel entirely. The sails are ripped to shreds. The crew, a mix of seasoned sailors and terrified convicts, is in a state of pure religious terror. They are praying. They are making vows to go on pilgrimages if they survive. They are bailing water with a frantic, hopeless energy. You, the Admiral of the Ocean Sea, are convinced you are going to die. And your greatest fear is not death itself. It is the thought that the knowledge of your discovery will die with you, that no one will ever know what you found, that your name will be lost to history, remembered only as the mad Genoese who sailed west and was never seen again. In the midst of this terrifying chaos, you do something born of pure, desperate ego. This is an obscure but telling part of your story. You find a piece of parchment, hastily scribble a brief account of your discoveries, and mention the riches that await. You wrap the parchment in a waxed cloth, seal it inside a wooden barrel, and throw it overboard. It is a message in a bottle, a desperate attempt to ensure your legacy survives even if you do not. It is a profound act of optimism to believe that this barrel will survive a hurricane, cross an ocean, and be found by someone who can both read and care. Somehow, through a combination of your own seamanship and sheer dumb luck, the tiny Niña survives the storm. Battered, bruised, and with its sails in tatters, your ship limps towards the nearest landmass, the Portuguese Azores Islands. Here, instead of a warm welcome, you are met with suspicion and hostility. The local Portuguese governor, loyal to the same crown that rejected you years earlier, accuses you of coming from forbidden African territories and briefly arrests half of your crew. You have to argue and threaten your way out, brandishing your letter of authority from the Queen of Spain. You have survived the Sea of Darkness and a hurricane, only to be nearly undone by a petty officious bureaucrat on a small island. Finally, you make it back to the port of Palos in Spain on March 15, 1493, 7 months after you left. You do not arrive in glory. You arrive in a single battered, half-destroyed ship with a crew of exhausted survivors and a cargo hold full of parrots and strange bark. Your triumph is not the confident arrival of a conqueror, but the weary, disbelieving return of a man who has been to the edge of oblivion and back. You have returned, not in glory, but in tatters. You are a commander who has lost his flagship and abandoned a third of his men on an unknown shore. Your cargo consists of a few bewildered captives, some noisy, birds, and a handful of golden trinkets that wouldn't pay for the repairs to your one remaining ship. By all rational measures, your first voyage was a glorious, costly failure. But you are, if nothing else, a much better salesman than you are a navigator. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. Your greatest success will be born from your greatest lie, trapping you in a web of expectations that will eventually destroy you. You send a letter ahead to the royal court, announcing your triumphant return from the Indies. You do not dwell on the shipwreck, the lack of spices, or the fact that you have found no evidence of the great civilizations of Asia. Instead, you paint a picture of a terrestrial paradise, a world of unimaginable fertility, populated by gentle, docile natives who are eager to convert to Christianity and to show you where they keep their vast, untapped gold mines. You are not just reporting on a discovery. You are pitching a colonial startup, and you are about to receive a massive new round of funding. The court, and indeed all of Spain, is electrified. In the euphoric aftermath of the victory at Granada, your news is seen as another sign of God's divine favor. You have not just found some islands, you have found a new world for Castile. Ferdinand and Isabella summon you to the court in Barcelona. Your journey across Spain is a victory tour. Crowds line the streets to see you, the great admiral, and to gawk at the parrots and the captive Taíno people you parade like living trophies. When you finally arrive and present your findings to the monarchs, you don't have much actual gold, so you focus on the potential. You show them the trinkets, the strange plants, the bewildered natives. It's the 15th century equivalent of a very weird vacation slideshow, and somehow they love it. This is a major historical fact of the moment. The actual, tangible return on your voyage was almost nothing. The political return, however, was immense. You had sailed west and claimed new lands for Spain. This was a direct challenge to the maritime dominance of Portugal. The Spanish monarchs immediately went to the Pope, a Spaniard himself, Alexander VI, who issued a series of papal bulls, most famously the Inter Caetera. This obscure but world-changing document drew a line down the map of the Atlantic and granted Spain the exclusive rights to all discovered lands to the west of it. The Pope, in a single, audacious gesture has just given Spain the entirety of the new world you have stumbled upon. Whether Ferdinand and Isabella were truly convinced by your tales of gold, or if they were shrewd political operators who simply saw the strategic value of claiming vast new territories before their rivals could, is a matter of historical debate. They were likely playing a much bigger game than you even realized. The result is that your apparent failure is spun into a monumental success. And you are the hero of the hour. Your titles of Admiral and Viceroy are confirmed. You are given a coat of arms, and most importantly, you are given a new fleet. This time, it will not be 3 rickety, cobbled-together boats. It will be a grand armada, 17 ships, over 1,200 men, not just sailors but soldiers, officials, priests, artisans, and gentlemen colonists, all eager to get their share of the gold you have so vividly described. You have gone from a desperate petitioner with a crew of convicts to the commander of a massive colonial enterprise. The pressure to actually find the gold and the great cities you promised has just increased 1,000-fold. This sucks because you are now trapped by your own hype. The first voyage was a gamble based on a private delusion. The second voyage is a massive state-sponsored enterprise based on a public lie. You have to go back. You have to establish a profitable colony. You have to find the gold mines. You have to find the route to mainland China. You have to deliver on a series of promises that are based on a geographical misunderstanding of planetary proportions. A callback to the flawed math that started this whole mess. You stand on the docks at Cadiz, watching the immense fleet being prepared. You are at the height of your fame and power. And you are a complete and utter fraud, about to lead 1,200 men on a massive expedition to a place that does not exist. You set sail on your second voyage in the autumn of 1493 with a fleet of 17 ships and the wind of royal favor at your back. This is no longer a desperate gamble. It is a full-blown colonial enterprise. You carry over 1,200 men, soldiers, farmers, artisans, priests, and most problematically, a large number of hidalgos, minor noblemen with no useful skills but a profound sense of entitlement. They are not coming to work, they are coming to get rich. They are expecting to step off the boat and into a world of gold mines and compliant native servants, a world you so vividly painted for them back in Spain. You are now the governor and viceroy of this new world, and you are about to discover that ruling is infinitely harder than exploring. After a swift and easy crossing, you arrive back in the Caribbean. Your first order of business is to return to Hispaniola, to the small fort of La Navidad, to relieve the 39 men you left behind nearly a year ago. You sail along the coast full of anticipation. You expect to be greeted as a returning hero by your men. You imagine them having amassed a great pile of gold, having mapped the local area, and having peacefully converted the natives to Christianity through their shining example of European piety. You have a very, very active imagination. You arrive at the site of the fort. There are no cheering men on the shore. There is no fort. There is only a blackened, smoking ruin, overgrown with weeds. A profound, deathly silence hangs over the place. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. Your first attempt at colonization has ended in a complete and utter catastrophe. You go ashore with a heavily armed party. You find the scattered, mutilated remains of your men buried in shallow graves. The fort has been burned to the ground. All 39 of them are dead. The exact sequence of events that led to the destruction of La Navidad is known only through your own accounts and the testimony of the local Taino people which you recorded. How much of the blame truly lay with your men's brutality versus intertribal conflicts among the Taino that the Spaniards were caught in the middle of is impossible to fully disentangle. But the story you piece together is a grim and predictable one. The men you left behind, a callback to the ill-disciplined crew of your first voyage, did not behave like pious ambassadors. Freed from your command, they quickly descended into a spiral of greed and brutality. They fought amongst themselves over the small amount of gold they had managed to trade for. They abandoned the fort and roamed the island in gangs, stealing food, treasures, and, most disastrously, women from the Taino villages. The local chief, Guacanagari, the same man who had wept with you and helped you salvage your ship, a callback to his profound kindness, tried to maintain peace, but your men were uncontrollable. Their cruelty and rapaciousness finally pushed the Taino too far. A powerful inland chief named Kaunabo, tired of the Spaniards' abuses, attacked the fort, burned it to the ground, and wiped out every last one of your men. It turns out that leaving a group of armed, unsupervised, and greedy men on a tropical island for a year is not an effective strategy for fostering peaceful diplomatic relations. It is, however, an excellent strategy for getting every single one of your men killed. This is a disaster of epic proportions. You have just arrived with 1,200 new colonists, full of high expectations, and your first act as governor is to preside over a graveyard. The paradise you described to Queen Isabella is a crime scene. The gentle, docile natives have proven that they will fight back when provoked, and the gold? There is still no sign of the great mines you promised. You now have a massive logistical and political crisis on your hands. You cannot report this. Catastrophic failure to the crown. You must spin it. You must find a new location, establish a new successful colony immediately, and above all, you must find gold and find it quickly to justify this entire enterprise. You look at the faces of the new arrivals, the gentlemen hidalgos who are already beginning to complain about the heat, the insects, and the distinct lack of opulent palaces. They are looking to you for leadership, for riches. You have led them to a land of ghosts and ruins. The immense pressure you felt before your first voyage is nothing compared to the weight on your shoulders now. You are no longer just an explorer with a flawed theory. You are a colonial governor responsible for the lives of over 1,000 people in a hostile land with a history of catastrophic failure already staining your record. You cannot stay at the cursed site of La Navidad. It is a place of ghosts, failure, and bad memories. You pack up your 1,200 colonists, now with their optimism thoroughly extinguished, and sail east along the coast of Hispaniola, searching for a more auspicious location to build your great colonial capital. You choose a spot with a defensible harbor and begin the work of founding the first formal European town in the New World. You name it La Isabela, a flattering gesture to the Queen, whose money you are now desperately trying not to waste. You choose a location with what you believe is a good strategic position. Unfortunately, it also has terrible soil for farming, no reliable source of fresh water, and is situated next to a swamp that serves as a 5-star resort for every mosquito in the Caribbean. It is a terrible place to build a city, but you are in a hurry to project an image of success. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. You are a magnificent sailor and a visionary navigator, but you are a catastrophically incompetent governor. Your colony of La Isabela quickly descends into a waking nightmare. The crops fail in the poor soil. The food you brought from Spain begins to spoil in the tropical heat. Famine sets in, followed swiftly by disease. Your colonists, weakened by hunger and exposed to new tropical illnesses for which they have no immunity, begin to die in droves. Malaria, yellow fever, and dysentery sweep through the miserable, hastily built settlement. And your colonists, especially the gentlemen hidalgos who came here expecting to be lords, are not adjusting well to the realities of manual labor. They came to the Indies to command natives and count gold, not to dig ditches and build mud huts. They refuse to work. They spend their days huddled in their shacks, sweating with fever and composing angry letters back to the crown about your mismanagement. Your colony has the morale of a funeral procession. Mutiny is no longer a whisper, it is an open topic of conversation. You have to act, you need to restore order, and you need to find gold, the one thing that will justify this entire disastrous enterprise. Since there are no great gold mines to be found, you decide to force the natives to find it for you. This is where your governorship descends from mere incompetence into outright tyranny. You implement a brutal system of tribute. This is an obscure but horrifying historical fact of your rule. Every Taino native on the island over the age of 14 is required to provide you with a quota of gold dust every 3 months. Enough gold to fill a small hawk's bell. In return, they are given a copper token to wear around their necks as proof of payment. Any Taino found without a current token is subject to severe punishment. The usual sentence for failing to meet your impossible quota is to have their hands cut off and be left to bleed to death. Your plan to get gold is brilliant in its simplicity and breathtaking in its cruelty. There is just one problem. There is not enough gold on the island to meet your demands. The small amounts the Taino possessed were accumulated over generations. There are no mines. The gold is found in tiny flakes, panned from rivers with immense effort. It is impossible for them to fill their quotas. But you do not see this as a flaw in your plan. You see it as a sign of the natives' laziness and defiance. So your soldiers enforce the tribute system with merciless violence. The Taino people, who once greeted you with generosity, are now hunted, tortured and murdered for failing to provide a treasure that does not exist. They begin to flee to the mountains. They begin to fight back. They begin to die in massive numbers, not just from the violence, but from the new European diseases your men have brought with them. The exact death toll among the Taino population of Hispaniola during your governorship is impossible to calculate with certainty, but modern estimates suggest that within just a few years of your arrival, a combination of disease, brutal forced labor, and outright violence may have reduced their population by half or more. A callback to the peaceful people who helped you at your shipwreck. You have now become the architect of their destruction. Back in La Isabela, your own men are still starving, still sick, and still plotting against you. You rule as a dictator because it is the only way you know. You hang Spanish mutineers with the same cold authority with which you punish the Taino. You are a man trapped in a hell of your own making. You have been given a paradise, and in less than 2 years, you have successfully transformed it into a disease-ridden, famine-stricken, rebellious penal colony. You have not found the riches of the Indies. You have only found new and ever more efficient ways to create human misery for both the colonizers and the colonized. Years pass in your troubled colony, years of famine, disease, native rebellions, and mutinies among your own men. You rule Hispaniola less like a viceroy and more like a besieged tyrant on a hostile island. You send ships back to Spain loaded not with the promised gold, but with another commodity, enslaved Taino people, a move that displeases the pious Queen Isabella. The reports that trickle back to the Spanish court paint a grim picture. They are not tales of a glorious new world, but of chaos, cruelty, and your own profound incompetence as an administrator. After years of complaints from angry colonists, disenfranchised hidalgos, and horrified priests who have witnessed your atrocities, the King and Queen of Spain finally decide to launch an official investigation into your management style. This is the 15th century equivalent of a surprise corporate audit, and you are about to fail it spectacularly. In the year 1500, a new ship arrives in the harbor of Santo Domingo, the new capital you founded, after abandoning the hellscape of La Isabela. The ship, carries Francisco de Bobadilla, a royal commissioner sent by the crown. He is not just an investigator, he carries a royal decree that gives him the full authority to act as he sees fit, up to and including assuming the governorship himself. The precise motives of Bobadilla are debated. Was he a just and honorable official, genuinely horrified by the abuses he found? Or was he an ambitious rival who had been given a royal license to usurp your power and titles for himself? The answer is likely a bit of both. When Bobadilla arrives, you're away in the island's interior, doing what you do best, brutally suppressing another native rebellion. Bobadilla sails into the harbor and sees 7 Spanish colonists hanging from a gallows, executed by your orders for insurrection. He hears testimony from dozens of angry, starving settlers who speak of your tyranny, your mismanagement, and your obsessive, secretive nature. He sees the state of the colony with his own eyes. It is a disaster. He does not wait for you to return. He immediately seizes your house, impounds your property, and frees your prisoners. When you finally return from your campaign, you are not greeted as the governor. You are met by a royal summons. You are brought before Bobadilla. He reads the royal letters to you. You are stripped of your titles. You are no longer viceroy. You are no longer governor. You are a prisoner. You, the admiral of the ocean sea, the man who was paraded through Barcelona as a hero, are publicly arrested and put in iron chains. Your brothers, Bartholomew and Diego, who had been helping you mismanage the colony, are also arrested and shackled. It is the ultimate, irreversible humiliation. The news spreads like wildfire through the colony you once ruled. The very men who feared you now openly mock you as you are led in chains to the ship that will take you back to Spain. You are now sailing back to Spain for the 3rd time. A callback. To your previous journeys, the contrast is devastating. Your first return was as a battered but triumphant survivor. Your second was at the head of a grand armada, a celebrated hero. This time, you are returning as a disgraced state prisoner, your ankles and wrists chafing in iron shackles in the dark, smelly hold of a caravel. It is a significant and painful step down on the career ladder. During the long, miserable voyage, the captain of the ship, a man who still holds you in some awe, offers to remove your chains out of respect. It is here that you perform your last great act of theatrical martyrdom. This is an obscure but telling detail of your character. You refuse. You insist on wearing the chains for the entire journey. You will arrive in Spain exactly as you are, a shackled prisoner, so that the king and queen can see for themselves the great injustice that has been done to you. According to your son, you will keep these chains with you for the rest of your life, a permanent physical reminder of your humiliation and your self-perceived martyrdom. You are no longer a conqueror or a governor. You are a man whose world has completely collapsed. You have been stripped of the power and the glory you dedicated your entire life to achieving. You have lost your titles, your property, and your honor. You are a failure, and as the ship rocks in the endless Atlantic, the only sound you hear is the soft, rhythmic, and deeply humiliating clank of your own chains. You arrive in Cadiz in November of 1500, clanking in your chains. The news of the arrest of the great admiral of the ocean sea, the discoverer of the Indies, creates a sensation and a profound scandal. The public humiliation is immense. You are brought before the king and queen in Granada. It is a powerful theatrical performance of a wronged man. You stand before them in your shackles, a living martyr. It works. They are embarrassed by the optics of the entire affair and angered that Bobadilla has so overstepped his authority. They order your immediate release and offer their apologies. You are pardoned for any alleged crimes. You are not, however, given back your job as governor. It seems they have concluded correctly that you are a magnificent explorer and a historically terrible manager. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. You are a man in limbo. You have been stripped of your power, but your titles remain. You are still the admiral, still the viceroy, but only in name. A new governor has been appointed to Hispaniola, and you are forbidden from returning there. You spend the next 2 years living near the court, a restless ghost of your former glory. You are a man whose great discovery has been taken away from him. You watch as other, lesser men grow rich and powerful from the world you found, while you are left to write angry letters to the crown, begging for the restoration of your rights and your share of the profits. It is during this period of disgrace that your mind takes a turn towards the mystical. You are no longer just an explorer. You believe yourself to be a divine messenger. This is an obscure but revealing chapter of your life. You spend your time compiling what you call the Libro de las Profecías, the Book of Prophecies. It is a strange, rambling collection of passages from the Bible, the writings of church fathers, and ancient prophecies, all of which you interpret as directly foretelling your own voyages. You argue that your discovery was not an act of geography, but a fulfillment of God's plan. You claim that you were personally chosen by the Holy Trinity to find a new route to the Indies so that the gold found there could be used to fund one last great crusade to recapture Jerusalem from the Muslims before the end of the world. Whether your increasing religious fervor and your compilation of the Book of Prophecies was a genuine descent into a messianic delusion, or a shrewd, calculated attempt to appeal to the deep piety of Queen Isabella to win back her favor, is a key question about your late-life psychology. What is certain is that you are now a man driven by a divine and deeply delusional obsession. You use this new holy mission to petition the crown for one last voyage, not to govern, not to colonize, but to explore. You convince them that you were on the verge of finding the ultimate prize, the one thing that has so far eluded you. A direct sea passage through the islands to the mainland of Asia and the rich spice markets of the Indian Ocean. You convince the crown to give you 4 small, aging ships for one last trip. Your new official mission: find the Strait of Malacca, which you are now utterly convinced is located somewhere near modern-day Honduras. Your geographical understanding has not improved with age. It has, if anything, gotten worse, now divinely sanctioned by your own prophetic interpretations. In 1502, you set sail on your 4th and final voyage. It is a pathetic shadow of your second expedition. You are no longer the great viceroy leading a colonial armada. You are an old, ailing man in his 50s with a crew of around 140 on a small, underfunded expedition to chase a geographical phantom. You are forbidden from stopping at your own colony of Hispaniola, a humiliating edict. You are a man haunted by the past, obsessed with a flawed idea, and sailing into the sunset of your own life on what will become the most miserable and disastrous voyage you have yet undertaken. You are chasing a ghost, and the only thing you will find is more pain, more failure, and a final, profound humiliation. Your 4th voyage is a cursed enterprise from the very start. You are the admiral of the ocean sea, yet you are forbidden from docking at Santo Domingo, the capital of the very lands you are supposed to be viceroy of. The new governor, your replacement, has been ordered to deny you entry. You are a king without a kingdom, an admiral without a port. You sail on, obsessed, exploring the coast of Central America. You are still looking for the Strait of Malacca. You find instead the mosquito-infested coasts of Honduras and Panama. There is no strait. There is no passage to India. There is only jungle, hostile natives, and a growing sense of despair. And then your ships begin to die. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. Your fleet is being eaten alive from beneath you. The tropical waters of the Caribbean are infested with shipworms, a type of clam that bores into any submerged wood. Your already old and poorly maintained ships are a feast for them. Their hulls, below the waterline, are being turned into a porous, fragile honeycomb. You are not sailing a fleet, you are the captain of a collection of slowly sinking, waterlogged colanders. The ships are leaking so badly that the crew has to work the pumps day and night just to keep you afloat. Finally, you have no choice. You must abandon the search. Your new, desperate mission is simply to make it back to a Spanish colony before your ships literally dissolve beneath your feet. You try to sail for Hispaniola, but the winds are against you. Your worm-eaten ships are too fragile to sail against the wind. In June of 1503, you are forced to beach your two remaining caravels on the northern coast of Jamaica. You run them, aground in a shallow bay side by side, and lash them together. Congratulations, you, the great explorer, the man who crossed the ocean, are now the unelected mayor of a rotting beached shipwreck. You and your 115 surviving crew members are marooned on an island with no European settlement, no way of contacting the outside world, and rapidly dwindling supplies. Your situation is catastrophic. You are old, in your 50s, and your body is racked with the pain of reactive arthritis, a condition that makes your eyes bleed and your joints swell. You are often confined to your cramped cabin in a state of agony. Your crew, meanwhile, is losing all discipline. They are sick, they are hungry, and they blame you for their predicament. After a few months, half of your crew, deciding they would rather take their chances dying somewhere else, mutinies. Led by the Porras brothers, they seize the 10 dugout canoes you had managed to trade for with the local natives and try to paddle to Hispaniola. They fail, are forced back by the currents, and then spend the next several months living as violent roving pirates on the island, terrorizing the native villages and generally making your already terrible situation even worse. You are left on the rotting ships with the sick, the weak, and the few remaining loyal men. Your survival now depends entirely on the goodwill of the local Jamaican natives, who have been providing you with food. But as the months drag on, they grow tired of feeding this large group of useless, demanding strangers. Their supplies dwindle, and their generosity wears thin. They cut you off. You are now facing starvation. It is here that you perform your last great act of cunning, a desperate gamble born of intellect and astronomical knowledge. This is an obscure but incredible true story. You have with you an astronomical almanac written by the German astronomer Regiomontanus. In it, you find a prediction for an upcoming total lunar eclipse visible from Jamaica on the night of February 29th, 1504. You summon the native chiefs to your shipwrecked fort. You tell them that your Christian God is angry with them for refusing you food. As a sign of his great displeasure, he is going to blot out the moon and paint it the color of blood. Whether your prediction was a moment of brilliant, calculated psychological manipulation or a desperate Hail Mary from a man who had completely run out of other options shows how fine the line between genius and desperation truly was for you. The chiefs are skeptical, but that night, as the full moon rises, a dark shadow begins to creep across its face, slowly turning it a terrifying coppery red. The natives are horrified. They believe you have the power to command the heavens. They begin to wail and cry, begging you to restore the moon, promising to bring you all the food you need. You theatrically retreat to your cabin, claiming you need to speak privately with your God. You wait until the almanac tells you the eclipse is about to end. You then emerge and announce that your God has heard their pleas and has agreed to forgive them. As if on command, the moon begins to reappear. Your gambit has worked. The food supply is restored. You have saved yourself and your men, not with a sword or a ship, but with a book of German astronomical tables. You are a brilliant, resourceful man. You are also a fraud, a con artist, and a king of a rotting kingdom of 2 beached ships, trapped at the end of the world. After a full year of being marooned in what feels like a floating, rotting prison, a rescue ship finally arrives. It was sent from Hispaniola by one of the few men who remained loyal to you, Diego Mendez, who had made the heroic 450-mile journey from Jamaica in a dugout canoe months earlier to plead for help. You and your surviving crew, a ragged collection of loyalists and defeated mutineers, are finally taken off the island. You return to Spain in November of 1504, expecting some sympathy, some recognition for the horrors you have endured. Instead, you find that the world has moved on, and everyone has mostly forgotten about you. The new world is old news now, and there are new, more competent and significantly less dramatic administrators running it. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. You have become an irrelevant and annoying old man. You arrive back in Spain, broken in body and in spirit. You are now in your 50s, but you look much older. You are plagued by a constant agonizing pain in your joints and a chronic inflammation of your eyes that sometimes makes them bleed. Modern doctors, looking back at the symptoms you described, believe you were suffering from Reiter's syndrome, a severe form of reactive arthritis. This is an obscure but grim detail of your final years. Your life is now a state of constant grinding and deeply unglamorous physical misery. And then, just a few weeks after your return, you receive the final crushing blow. Your primary patron, your protector, Queen Isabella of Castile, is dead. She was the one who believed in the religious missionary aspect of your quest. She was the one who had a certain sentimental attachment to you, the man she had sponsored. King Ferdinand, a much colder, more pragmatic and more fiscally conservative ruler, has little time for your mystical prophecies, your endless complaints, or your creative accounting. With Isabella gone, your last hope of having your governorship and your full, extravagant share of the profits restored dies with her. You spend your last 2 years of life as a bitter, complaining invalid, living in a modest rented house in the city of Valladolid. You are a ghost at the royal court. The true state of your finances at the end of your life is a matter of some debate. While you were no longer the powerful viceroy, you and your heirs were not destitute and did receive some income from the Indies, but for a man who believed he was promised 10% of the wealth of Asia, a callback to your original grandiose demands, any sum would have felt like a paltry, insulting pittance. You spend your days writing long, pleading, increasingly unhinged letters to King Ferdinand, demanding your money, your titles, and your honor back. The king, who is busy running a global empire, mostly just leaves your letters on read. You are the great admiral of the ocean sea, and you have been demoted to the status of an annoying elderly pen pal. The greatest irony of all is that you will go to your grave utterly, stubbornly, and completely wrong, even now, after 4 voyages, after seeing a vast new continent teeming with cultures that have no connection to Asia. You refuse to accept the truth. A callback to your original flawed theory, you insist with the conviction of a madman that you have found the outskirts of Cathay, that Cuba is part of the Asian mainland, that the pearls and the small golden masks you found are just a prelude to the great treasures of the Grand Khan that lie just beyond the next jungle. You are a man who has accidentally rearranged the entire globe, and you cannot or will not see the true scale of what you have done. On May 20th, 1506, you die. Your death is not a major news event. It is not marked by state funerals or grand pronouncements. It goes largely unnoticed by the world you so profoundly and accidentally changed. You are a man who set in motion the creation of a new world, and you get a 2-line obituary in the local paper if you're lucky. You die a bitter, disappointed man, convinced you were a failure because you did not find a shortcut to Japan. You never grasped that your true, world-shattering legacy was born from that very failure. You died complaining about contracts, a forgotten man in a rented house, while the seeds of the new world you had sown were already beginning to sprout into a forest of conquest, colonization, and catastrophe. You die in your bed in Valladolid, a bitter and disappointed man. You are largely forgotten, a footnote in the grand theater of the Spanish court. You are convinced you have failed. You never found the great cities of the Grand Khan. You never secured the immense wealth you were promised, and you died stripped of the honors you believed were yours by right. But this is the final and greatest reason it sucks to be you. Your personal failures unleashed a success so catastrophic that it would permanently scar the face of the planet. You do not die a failure. You die as one of the most consequential and destructive successes in all of human history. After your death, the world you stumbled upon by accident becomes the new focus of European ambition. An entire continent previously unknown to Europe, is now open for conquest. And the men who follow in your footsteps are not interested in trade or conversion. They are interested in gold, land, and glory, and they will carve a path through empires to get it. You are not just an explorer. You are the catalyst. You are the small stone that started an avalanche. The most devastating part of your legacy is not the violence you personally committed, but the biological holocaust you unknowingly unleashed. This is the great historical fact known as the Columbian Exchange. Your ships and the ships that followed did not just carry men and horses, they carried invisible passengers, smallpox, measles, influenza, typhus, diseases that had ravaged Europe for centuries, but to which the native peoples of the Americas had absolutely no immunity. The result was the single greatest demographic catastrophe in human history. Within a century of your arrival, an estimated 90% of the indigenous population of the Americas was wiped out. Entire civilizations, cultures, and languages vanished from the earth, not from the sword, but from a cough, a fever, a single breath. In return, the Americas gave Europe syphilis, along with potatoes and tomatoes that would change its diet forever. It was not a fair trade. Your voyages also laid the legal and religious groundwork for centuries of colonization. A callback to the papal bulls that secured your claim, the principles established by the Pope after your first voyage, created what became known as the Doctrine of Discovery. This was an obscure but world-altering legal concept. It gave Christian nations the right to claim any non-Christian lands they discovered and to subjugate the peoples who lived there. It was a divine permission slip for conquest. You did not just open a new world to Europe, you provided the legal and moral justification for its subjugation. Centuries later, your name will be on cities, countries, holidays, and monuments. Across the world you helped to create. You will be celebrated as a heroic pioneer, a visionary who connected two worlds. You will also be reviled as a symbol of colonial brutality, greed, and the architect of a genocide. Your legacy is so vast, so contradictory, and so toxic that no one can agree on what it is. It is, perhaps, the most fittingly chaotic monument to your strange, accidental, and world-altering life. And so, your story ends, not with the quiet obscurity you found in your deathbed, but with the loud, unending echo of the world you created. You were a man driven by a flawed map and a stubborn dream, a man whose personal miseries were immense. But the suffering you endured pales in comparison to the suffering you unleashed. You wanted to find a shortcut to the spices of the East, and in your failure, you became the architect of a new West. You were not the hero of the story. You were not even the villain. You were